And we're recording. Hey, Dalton, thanks for taking the time to, answer some questions and talk to my students at Rankin.
Sure.
I guess kind of the opening question that I always start with is, would you introduce yourself to the class?
Sure. My name is Dalton Nichols. I graduated from Ranken Tech in 2020. You want where I'm working and everything as well?
Yeah.
Right now? Sure. Okay. So I work for Uncomn, and I'm contracted to the U.S. Air Force. So right now I write software for the Air Force.
Oh, that's interesting. So, what does your software do for the Air Force?
I can't go super far into it, but it's basically like enterprise architecture.
Okay.
So architecting how things, we build a tool that they use to architect how things move, basically.
Okay. And you had to get like a security clearance to do this, and that's why you can't
Right.
get into the weeds. This is all private information. It's
Right.
sensitive. You know, if I told you, I'd have to kill you, kind of stuff.
Right.
Well,
Not that I
cool.
do
So you
anything
graduated
secret.
in 2020, and here we are a couple years later. And did you say your job title at Uncommon?
Oh, I'm a software engineer.
Job title of software engineer. And where's Uncommon located?
So we have offices in O'Fallon and St. Louis. The St. Louis office, some of them might know, the T-Rex building.
Yeah.
So we're in the T-Rex building there, and then we are right outside the gates of base in O'Fallon.
In O'Fallon, Illinois, Scott Air Force
Yeah.
Base.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And so it looks like you're in the office. Are you in the office 5 days a week?
I am. Yep. My team specifically is always in-house for just security reasons. But there are teams that have started moving to the cloud, like in government teams. We just haven't made it there quite yet. So it's a slower move when you're in government stuff.
Yeah. Um, when the pandemic hit, did you have a lot of work from home days, or were you pretty much always in the office?
So I actually started in sort of middle of COVID. So I started in October of that year. So everybody else, the whole rest of the world was shut down. But my first day, from day one, I was in the office.
Okay.
So
Wow.
we can't access servers and everything from outside of the office. So we've got shut down a couple times because COVID broke out within the team. And so we just had to do training from home. So just going over languages and stuff, but we can't really work. So.
Okay. So you've had a few work from home days, but for the most part, for security reasons, you've had to be in the office.
Right.
And so you're developing software for the Air Force out at Scott Air Force Base. And what languages do you use on a daily basis? Like, what are your primary languages?
Sure. So we are a .NET stack. So C Sharp, HTML, we use Razor pages still currently. JavaScript, just all your basic languages with .NET stack.
Okay. So I'm just going to repeat what you said. .NET, C Sharp, HTML. I don't believe you mentioned CSS, JavaScript.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Those are the core things that
Yeah.
you use.
We have some pieces that are Angular, and then we're looking at switching the whole app to a more modern language
Okay.
here soon. But soon could mean 2 years down the road when
Yeah.
you're here. So
Yeah. So you actually, it was really, really interesting. I was having a meeting yesterday morning. My meeting ended at 8 a.m. and I was more or less showing some industry stats to my bosses and discussing curriculum at Rankin and the direction that we're heading. And when you came through Rankin, you studied full stack application development in .NET in the .NET framework.
right.
And so when you came through Rankin, that fed pretty well into, it sounds like, what you're using on a daily basis.
Yeah, for sure. That's exactly what I do today.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear. And since you've graduated, we've gone more towards that JavaScript stack, which you mentioned that you could be heading there in the future.
Right.
But still today you're on the .NET framework, and
Mm-hmm.
it was really interesting because I was talking about kind of pros and cons of the different languages and where the industry's heading and all this kind of stuff. And I said, well, we're not teaching as much full stack web development in the .NET framework. So I said, I'd like to bring that back into the curriculum. Long story short, my meeting ends at 8 o'clock. You messaged me at 7:58 yesterday morning and said, hey, we have a .NET opening. Do you have any talented grads that you could send my way for an entry-level position? And I was like, oh my gosh, that is perfect. I just sent that to my boss and I said, hey, here's another example of why I want to get this .NET framework on the web stack back at
Sure.
Rankin,
Yeah, for sure. Definitely any government job is still using it for sure. And there's plenty of old, even if you're not using it moving forward for the next several years, like we're at such a phase, people graduating now in the last several years, if we are brought in, a lot of times they were using that and maybe you're transitioning to Angular. You still got to learn that to be able to transition it. So
yeah.
still effective either way.
So how big of a team are you on?
So there are 15 of us total. So that's developers, managers, testers, database guys. So
how big was the learning curve out of Rankin?
well, I don't remember what semester we stopped doing C#, but I hadn't touched it for a while. So it was steep. It was,
Yeah.
that's for everybody, whether they come from any other program, all the guys have had the same experience. What we're working on is so massive. We just had some guys come from another team at Uncomn, and even they were like, this is huge. Like, how do you find anything? So the curve was really steep, and that was a mix of learning the business logic and the coding knowledge. So
yeah, how did you feel the learning curve was while you were at Rankin? Did you feel like you had just as steep of a learning curve at Rankin?
So I had, outside of basic web development, I had no coding knowledge prior to Rankin. So I felt like it was, I was on a rocket. But I know guys like, Evan and Grant who had Java experience prior to coming. This was just like, half of it was a refresher for them. So it really depends on your background, I feel like. But for me, the learning curve was steep.
Yeah, so the learning curve was steep at Rankin, and then it continued to be steep in the industry. How do you feel about the learning curve today? You've been out there for a couple of years. How's the learning curve today?
Sure. So on our specific team, the business logic is so thick. It's like you have to learn this whole new world before you can write code for it. So because of that, it takes guys a lot longer to like really grasp on. And so I would say, I just said a couple weeks ago, I just now feel like I know exactly what's going on every day.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily just the coding.
Break that down a little bit more for my students who might not understand, like, what do you mean the business logic?
Sure. So like if you're building an app for a car, you need to know what a tire is, you need to know what a steering wheel is, you need to know what a window is. I came into the military world, and everything has an acronym for something that I don't know. So the business logic will be, if you're making a recipe application, you need all the ingredients, and I don't know what any of the ingredients are, or didn't know. So I had to learn all the ingredients and then learn how to write code for those.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the differentiation there.
What do you think was harder for you, learning the coding or learning the business?
It was at 50-50.
50-50.
Our app is so huge, so we technically have a suite of applications, and they're so big that there are still parts after 2 years here that I haven't touched to this day, and there's parts that guys have been here for 5 years have never touched.
Yeah.
So we kind of end up with knowledge silos. Sometimes we'll have the one same guy that did it once hit it forever until they're gone. So
wow,
that's kind of a failing point.
Tell me a little bit more about Uncommon. Tell me about the business that you work for. Why do you like working there?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So of all the places I worked, this is by far the best company I've ever been at. I didn't initially plan to come here out of school. I basically had something all lined up with another company in St. Louis, and COVID hit, and they're basically like, see you later. So I got lucky, and I got connected with Rachel. I don't know if she still comes and does all that, but I got connected with Rachel, So if you ever see her there, get connected with her because she
Well, hold on. See her there. You mean at Rankin, like at a job
at
fair?
Rankin. Yeah.
Is
So
that how
she's
you
the
got
front coder.
connected with Rachel? Was that a Rankin job fair?
It was when she came to view our finals
Oh, okay.
that time. So she had seen that, and then she heard about some of the stuff I was doing on the side, and she basically helped propel me through every interview. So she was a great advocate to have. But once getting here, genuinely, it's the nicest people I've ever met. Like, everybody's super cool. Everybody's down to help you learn. The culture is really fun. Like, we have, like, behind me, there's a break room with like a pool table, and the other one has some other kind of game. And then we've got like a VR over on our side. So the culture is just really cool. It's really relaxed. Our schedule is whatever we want it to be. So you're expected to fill out your hours for the week, but you can do that whenever. And then, all the great stuff that you got to have for life, like, the benefits and the good pay. But like, I don't absolutely dread coming to work every day like I did prior to coming here. So it's great. It's the best company I've ever been at, for sure.
Well, that's great. That's great to hear. So, just to touch on a couple points. So Rankin has had a good relationship with Uncomn for a long time. They've hired our graduates out of our program for several years. I know you and several others that have worked at Uncomn. And so Rachel came to your presentation of your final project. So you actually gave a presentation in front of some employers. Rachel was one person that was there representing Uncomn. She was impressed by your final project. What was your final project that was so impressive?
So, before I came here, before I came to Rankin, sorry, I worked as a sales manager for a granite company. And so a lot of that involved selling people granite for headstones. So we had to have record of all of that forever. And so the company I worked for had done that on pen and paper with filing cabinets for literally forever. It took forever to find a contract. Contracts got lost all the time. So I basically just rewrote that in C# so that I could just enter all of that on a computer, and then it would all be saved in a database. We could access it from any office, and then we didn't have to worry about losing stuff, about not being able to find it quickly. We could just type it in the search bar, and we had every person named James for the last 100 years. So,
did that actually get used by the business?
We talked about it, and actually ended up selling the company, so we did not.
You were just there, so close.
Yeah.
Close. But I think, in summary, from my observation, what made your project so impressive is that it had really good application in the real world. And this company, from my understanding, would have used it had they not, been sold and, sold off. So
yeah, that's my hope.
And so it made a good real world project.
Sure.
You built something for someone else that they wanted to use.
Right.
Yeah, that's cool. So what's a day in the life of Dalton like? 9 to 5.
Sure. So I typically come in 7 to 3, and
because you have flexible hours.
Depending. Right.
Okay.
So like some of our guys, like our lead developer got here at 10 yesterday. So it's kind of nobody's watching over your shoulder to make sure you do it. They just trust you to be honest and work the time that you're supposed to work.
Yeah.
So I come in 7. I go sit at my computer, get everything started up, kind of just settle in for a while. But the guys are there usually talk when we all first get here for a little bit. Then we just kind of dive in. Everybody just gets in the zone until around 10, and then we have stand up. And then after stand up, everybody just kind of chills for just a little bit again. It's a really relaxed environment, which is nice. Nobody's like, get back to work.
Yeah.
The whole time. So,
yeah, you don't have a whip on your back.
Right. Like our boss is hanging out with us.
Yeah.
So it's very nice. And so do that, and then go to lunch, and then I'm gone by 3, and I'm on with the rest of my day. So
on average, how many hours a day do you spend actually writing code?
Probably 6 to 7.
Yeah.
Realistically, probably closer to 6 when you count like breaks and lunch and that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then you always have meetings. We have meetings with the government ever so often to key requirements and do sprint reviews and those kind of things. So
Yeah.
it definitely varies.
Now, I know some of the software you've written has rules around talking about it. You can't talk about it. Is there any software that you would label as just like some cool software that you were able to work on that you can talk about?
I've actually been on this same project since I've been at Uncommon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
not
so
so much.
unfortunately, not really.
That's okay. That's all right.
I do also, I guess this part, I don't know if I told you this, I have a web development company on the side, like made it all official. We have a few people to work with us and everything. So doing that on the side, I have had some cool interactions. I've been able to work with a couple big companies doing that. So I had a fairly large company called Saucy contact me a while back, and I basically just last week finished up rewriting basically all of their website. So that's one thing that has been huge that I even did at Rankin was the freelance stuff. Has led into like fairly large clients afterwards. So
what's the name of your side business here?
It's called Genesis Tech.
Genesis Tech. I mean, I remember the name from. Now that's not Genesis Technologies.
Nope, just Genesis Tech LLC.
Okay. Genesis Tech LLC. I'm Googling you. There it is. Yeah, I guess there's a Genesis Technologies Incorporated.
There is.
You're the second link. So a little plug on, pull you up on the screen here for your. And so you build websites on the side, and I'm looking at your website. And so what languages do you focus on when you build websites for this company?
So it varies. So I use, so when you say WordPress, most people are thinking like mom blog WordPress.
Yep.
But you can basically use WordPress as a frame to kind of lay down and then build on top of. So I use them as the base. So that gives you where a user can go in and add images and add blog posts and stuff with a friendly UI that they can use. Because often for smaller companies, I'm not going to manage it for them, for eternity. It's not, there's no return on income for that really.
Yeah, I literally have a site that I'm gonna literally today show my class a little bit of WordPress and from an updating standpoint to update the site and what it's like from the end user, how easy it can be to update a site on WordPress.
Right.
Yeah.
So I basically use that as the frame, and then I have built it's called a child theme, and basically laid it on top of WordPress. And then I have all these blocks that they can pull in to edit things themselves once I'm gone. So it's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP is the back end.
Yep.
And then when I do it on Shopify, I do the same thing. And their language is called Liquid, so it's a little more specific. But.
Oh, so you have Shopify for customers who need storefronts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They take a little, I guess that's the idea behind Shopify is they take a good cut.
Right. So it's $30 a month. And then after the $30 a month, it's just your credit card fees. So it's like 3%.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to our current students to be successful at Rankin?
Just do everything on time. Don't procrastinate. That was, I could probably speak for Evan and I both. There are countless times we are like waking up the morning of to write something that we're supposed to have done already because we had done something stupid the night before. So just do things early, just like grind for the 2 years that you're here because it pays off dividends. The job I had before I came here, I was literally making $10 an hour at that granite company. So
before Rankin is what you're saying.
Before Rankin, yes, sorry. If you'll just grind for the 2 years that you're here, it pays off in unimaginable ways for sure.
Cool.
The other thing I would say is any opportunity you get, do freelance stuff. That has benefited me so much. Rachel seeing my project got me in the door. And then after that, I built a smart mirror that is in my house. There's a mirror with a Raspberry Pi and all kinds of data that I have on the mirror. She happened to hear about that somehow. And that was mentioned in every single interview from Rachel at a coffee meeting to the partner of the company in my final interview. So that was a huge part. They all wanted to see the mirror. They all wanted to see other projects I had done. So do the little tinkering stuff. It helps out.
Well, and why is that? I would just say, why is that little side work so important? And I would just add that it's important because it proves that you're a techie. It
Sure.
proves that you live and breathe this stuff a little bit. Okay, that you're not necessarily just in it for money or just in it for self-interest or whatever. You live this stuff a little bit.
Right.
And there's a lot of people that'll talk and tell you how techie they are and how they talk over your head if they can, and
Right.
how much they love coding and how much they love this, but they don't really walk the walk. They just talk the talk.
Sure.
And so I think employers like to see that because you are literally walking the walk at that point. You're not just talking the talk. Oh, I
Right.
love coding. I love programming. Okay, show me something that you did outside of something you were required to do.
Right.
Oh, well, here's a freelance website I built for a client. Here's a smart mirror that I did for fun. You're walking the walk outside of school, outside of work. You're living it. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, well, cool. That's a great answer. Yeah.
Well, one other tip I would give, do you remember Jeremy? He worked at Eagle. He came and talked to us
Yeah.
one year. I actually worked with him for a while. So Jeremy came into the program whenever I was there, I think also my first semester maybe. And he came in and he talked about having imposter syndrome bad. And that is one thing he said that stuck with me literally through my whole career. So I was just going to mention that. Like when you come out, I still today feel like this sometimes. And another guy mentioned it. It almost feels like we faked our way into these jobs because they're so over our heads. It's going to feel over your head when you start. You're not going to feel like you understand everything. When I came in for the first month, I literally thought, I'm gonna have to quit. Like I'm not smart enough to do this. But it gets easier as time goes on, and that sort of imposter syndrome kind of goes away.
Yeah.
So that was a big tip I received.
It's great.
Just hold on, and you won't feel like you're fooling everybody at some point.
Yeah, that's a great tip. Yesterday, I was listening to a podcast, and it was an extremely successful businesswoman who had started, I don't know, countless companies. And she was standing on stage talking about successful entrepreneurship. And as a person who has walked that walk and started how many unicorn businesses, right, that made all this money, and she has walked the walk, and she's standing on stage and she goes, I feel like I have imposter syndrome. I don't know why you're interviewing me. I don't know why I'm here on stage. And getting over that and the confidence that comes with, that's the challenge, is like building up that confidence that you see, so that you know that it's just a feeling, like you should be here, you belong here, and building up that confidence comes with a little bit of time.
For sure.
You just have to recognize it for what it is.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you speak to the industry around, salary and salary expectations? Like, what were your salary expectations coming out of Rankin? Were they met? Were they not met? And, here you are a couple years in, like ballparking, kind of what should students have for salary expectations?
Sure. So whenever I was graduating, I was expecting probably around 65. So anywhere I went, I was shooting for 70. I did not get that. I got a little bit below 65 when I started. And then today starting out, it's kind of tough to say. I would probably say the 65 to 70 range is probably fairly accurate from people that I talk to and the things that I hear around. It's been, 4 years since I actually started developing for a job. So it's been a while since I was at that entry level to hear kind of what the ranges were. But I think that's probably about what I would shoot for places, 65, 70. I always ask for at least $5,000 more than I want.
Yeah.
And then if they give it to you, awesome. If they don't, well.
Yeah. That was your ask. It makes sense to negotiate that way. So you did say briefly there that you kind of had a goal. You didn't meet your goal immediately salary wise. Like, was that hard to stomach?
No, not really, because it was still drastically more than I was making, prior to Rankin.
Yeah. So was
I
your
mean, it was
goal
still
your goal for the time a little lofty?
um, looking back, I still feel like it was probably fairly accurate.
Okay.
I don't think 65 is too much to ask, if you know what you're doing and stuff. And I had experience prior to coming here.
Yeah.
My first programming job was WordPress sites at Edge, and that was only like 40,000. So this was a massive jump. I was taking anything to get in the industry. And I know there's plenty of guys that I've talked to that didn't make what I was making when we came out of the program. So it depends on where you go and the size of the company and all that.
Yeah.
I know some of my buddies were making 50 something when we first came out, but
yeah.
I would always say at least 50 something. I was very underpaid at Edge.
So now you've been in the industry for a few years, and you're developing this successful career. And so, looking to the future, do you think this is where you will be for your entire life? Do you think you'll retire a software engineer, or do you see yourself changing it up at some point?
Sure. So I don't see myself staying an engineer forever. I'm actually working on changing that hopefully very soon. I'm looking at moving into project management with Uncomn, hopefully. And then I will be helping manage a team of engineers if that were to happen. So that would be my end goal, really, is to do something more along those terms. You kind of get the whole overview of like all the servers and what you're doing with everything. It's more than just your development piece. You kind of have the view of everything that's going on with the landscape of the project. I'm going back to school for my master's in information technology management. So I'm hoping to use that to get into a position more of like managerial in tech.
So why do you want to make this transition from developer, coder, engineer into manager?
Sure. So my first degree before coming to Rankin was in business. And so that was always kind of my goal. And then I was like, I hate this. So that's why I ended up coming to Rankin. And as I've kind of worked with our project managers and things like that, I've seen those two pieces kind of come together, like the love of tech and the business side. And I do like working with people and talking to people. And when you're an engineer, you're not doing that a ton. So if you're an introvert, this is the place to be. It depends on your team for sure. Like my team will stop and take breaks and talk, but outside my team, I don't talk to a ton of people. You're pretty to yourself, put your headphones on, doing your thing. So I kind of like the break you get, the break up in your day rather, of working with people and doing other things too. So I think it's the best of both worlds.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense for you. Those were the questions that I had. Kind of open it up to my class. Anybody have any questions out there on Discord world or in person?
So this might be a little out of the scope, but since you have the one employee who has this level of knowledge of your of an application, and then they're leaving or they're about to leave the door, is there any point in which you plan to like get a deep dive into that application, find out all the parts of it, and then start training others? So, because I'm in right now, in addition to the AWD, I'm also in the BSAM program, and right now I'm in human resource management, and we're at a chapter regarding recruitment, training, and retention.
Okay, so did you get some of that, or I can repeat it?
I just got pieces
of it. So you're on a team, software developers. Let's say you lose a team member, and they have a skill set that it's hard to replace. And so how do you go about replacing that person and making sure that that knowledge is shared, so that you're not stuck. He goes on to explain from a human resources and retention side.
Sure. So right now, we had a couple guys that have just left recently. They lived a little further away, so it just made sense for them. But one of them was a brilliant dude, but he was a very much a knowledge silo. He had all the information about this one piece. And so before he left, it took us just sitting down and going through this piece that he had written, because you're always going to know more about the parts that you're writing for change requests. If you're writing a new feature, no one knows it better than you. And so sometimes we can get in the bad habit of, oh, here's something for this piece that I know Chris wrote. I'm going to send this to Chris forever. And so after that, we kind of realized, like, oh, we need to break this up. So part of that is when stories, bugs come in with his new part of the tool, you say, okay, Chris isn't going to do this. We're going to have someone else take this and kind of learn this piece. So that's a big part, making sure that we're disseminating what he knows about that piece of the tool through stories. I think before he left, he even sat down with the senior dev and went through the things he had done. And then he can kind of disseminate that after Chris leaves. So just making sure that everybody touches the main pieces of the tool. You're never going to touch all of it, at least where I'm at. But touching the big pieces that you're going to have to often, rather than having one guy do everything. So.
Yeah. Kind of another question that came across here is, so at Rankin, you learned a tech stack and you use that on the job. What new things have you had to learn that wasn't at Rankin, that you didn't learn at Rankin?
Sure. So when I was at Rankin, we didn't do Angular, React, or anything like that. So I had to learn Angular when I came. And then we are talking about switching to either Angular or React. So I've spent a lot of time just kind of learning both of those in my free time and during some like paid training. I also, if you're in any government position in tech now, you have to have a security plus. So that was another thing. When I came on, I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to be able to get that. I'm going to get fired. But I just was grinding on all the security plus stuff and was able to pass that. So that's a great thing to have, even if you're not in the tech world. People like to see it. It shows that you do have a security mindset and you can understand it. You know what's going on. It also lets them know one thing I think that my employers liked was that I understood some of the server side and the physical things that were happening in the building rather than just programming.
Right.
So making yourself kind of an all-arounder. You don't have to be an expert, but know what a server is, know how all the routing and stuff works. So
nice. Any other questions out there? We've been doing these interviews, so they've. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, speaking on. I was wondering if we could speak more on the freelance stuff. Like, when you're getting into building websites for customers, how do you even begin to structure how you're going to charge these people? Is there like flat rates? Like, how does all that go down? And do you mind providing any examples of a website you created, possibly, that what you ended up like charging them for? Just out of curiosity.
Okay. Did you hear any of that?
No.
Nope. Okay. So just more or less talk a little. Would you mind talking a little bit more about the freelancing work that you've done throughout your career? How'd you figure out a pricing model and what to charge? And do you have any example sites that you can show off, so to speak?
Sure. So it was a trial and error process, a ton. If you go online and Google what should I charge for a website, somebody's going to tell you $50 and somebody's going to tell you $5,000. So the truth is somewhere in between. So I started out, I was a sales manager at a company and I hated my life. So I started YouTubing how to write websites. Literally just randomly one day I found CSS Sandbox online and started writing basic HTML and CSS. And I was like, I think I could do this. And so I found things like WordPress and Shopify, which anybody can do. If a mom can make a website for a blog on WordPress, you can write one for a business, especially if you have any coding knowledge at all. So I would say start with WordPress. That is not what I did, but that's what I would do today if I started over. You don't have to pay for it. There's a free version of WordPress. So WordPress.com is the mom blog version. If you go to WordPress.org, you can download everything that WordPress has. And then you can install something called XAMPP. It's XXAMP. It's a local server on your machine. You can upload WordPress to it. And then you can learn WordPress without paying anything. So I would say do that. A guy named Danny that graduated after me, I taught him how to do that. And I would sit down and go over stuff with him all the time. And before I even left Rankin, he was building his own sites on that. So start on that, and then go get some cheap hosting. You can get cheap hosting at like Bluehost or GoDaddy, and then just find somebody to make a site for and try it out. And then once you have one, you can be like, hey, I built this site, and then you get another one. If you go on like Upworks and things like that, you can get sites. You're not going to make as much money as if you just did it by yourself, but it'll get you in the door. So I start with WordPress and Shopify because there's so much on YouTube and stuff out there to learn with those.
Yeah, it is a final project in this class to build a freelance site for somebody.
Oh, nice.
And so everyone in here should, by the end of this semester, have their first live website for a client, not themselves. So it is a part of this class. Now WordPress, I would say, is an added benefit. That if you want to pick it up, and like I said, I'm going to go over some WordPress today. But anyways, so trial and error for the price structure.
Yes.
Get a client or two under your belt, and then you'll have some confidence, and maybe you could charge a little more.
Yeah. So on that part, my first site I charged $500 for. It's going very good for that guy. I way undercharged. I just found out yesterday he's moving to Florida. He bought like a 5-bedroom house that has a guest house using the site that I built that I only charged him $500 for. So I just made this dude was like just a normal guy that lived around here. And I built him a website selling these knives, and he quit his job, and that's all he does. And he's making a crazy amount of money. So if you help them succeed, they're going to do great, and then you can charge more. So like 500 was my first one, and I have regretted that every day since the very first site, because I'm watching him just throw money around.
Maybe we need to start selling knives, Dalton. What's the deal here?
Right.
Where do you get a cheap knife supplier?
We're in the wrong field. But like stuff like that, like because I was like, oh,
that's a good story, man. I like that story.
It's a good, yeah.
It's a good one.
But like my thought with charging him was he's just a guy, like, small town dude. He's from Altamont, Illinois. I'm like, oh, it's just a small town guy. Like, I'm not gonna charge him a lot. That won't be right. But now he's moving to Florida, and I'm still sitting here because I charged him $500.
Just out of curiosity, were you selling knives on the website?
No. We are. He is. But I built the site that he sells the knives on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you use Shopify for that?
Yes. So that was my first one was Shopify. If you're doing anything with like checking out, Shopify is the way to go because it's like Amazon level professionalism for the checkout process, which is a huge part for e-commerce.
Yeah.
You can get your taxes and everything all really set and with Shopify versus using WordPress for that. So I built several Shopify sites. The one I just finished last week for that large client was Shopify as well.
Yeah. And does having a knowledge of HTML, CSS, JavaScript, does that help you build better Shopify sites?
Yeah, for sure. If you can build them, you can build either of them without the knowledge, but it's going to look like you just built a WordPress site, and it's going to look like you built a Shopify site. The goal is to use those platforms and make it look like it's a completely custom professional build.
Yeah.
So just use them as a framework.
Versus looking generic versus looking more professional. Yeah.
For sure.
Did he hit all those topics that you were asking him, Mel? Did he answer all those questions?
Yeah, and then I guess one more thing I was going to ask about was, so whenever you are building for a customer, so how are you like logging how much you're, like, I guess, paying yourself whenever you're charging them, or how does all that go?
So I think this is kind of a business-oriented question, like how do you pay yourself versus pay the business, and how do you log all that, accounting type stuff?
So that is, I was fortunate enough to have been with a small company before I came to Uncomn, which was nice in this way. I learned so much about running a business because my boss would just kind of have us do all this stuff for him. So if you want to have a legal business, the best way, and tell me, you stop me if I'm diving too deep into this, too far into the weeds, but it's get an LLC. So you can get an LLC or you can get incorporated, or you can do a DBA, which is what my sister does. It's doing business as this business. But with the DBA, it's really cheap, it's really easy to get, but there's no separation of you and the business. Your business gets sued, you're getting sued. So they can come after your personal stuff. With an LLC, it is harder. You kind of have a gate between your personal finances and the finances of the business. So if you just go on like Google LLC in your state, it should pull up your .gov site. Don't go to anything besides .gov. My sister also did that. And you can get scammed really easily. Your .gov site, and they'll walk you through how to do it. It's a couple $100. I had to have mine expedited, so I think I ended up paying like $200 or less to have my LLC done. And then you need to get some paperwork filled out and all of that. If you look up YouTube videos, they'll explain the best way to do an LLC.
Yeah, there's also just to throw it in there, you could go through a lawyer, and if you go through a lawyer, you're going to pay about $500. But you know,
Right.
if this is DIY and you pay $200, and I personally would recommend a lawyer. That way, you cross all your T's and dot all your I's.
Yeah. If you've not experienced any of it before, I would probably go through a lawyer.
Yeah, it's just.
Or there's.
But you know, you say if money's tight and you're going to be thorough about your paperwork, then there's really no harm in DIY.
Yeah, I had spent months researching it prior to launching it, and I had people helping me that had done it prior, so it wasn't too bad for me. But when the money comes in, I have not taken any money out of the company. I have just left it all in for a rainy day, and I need to go buy a new car. And so I have just started now paying myself out of my company. So I literally write a check from my company to myself. And then I use something called Wave. So Wave is invoicing. You can do payroll. It's basically QuickBooks for free. So it's like a third party. They just take out the credit card fees, which anybody's going to do. So I send an invoice to somebody. They pay that directly on the invoice with their credit card. It comes into my Wave account. Wave exports it to my bank. And then I pay myself with a check from my bank right back in my other banking account.
This is one from advice on software engineering to advice on entrepreneurship.
Hey, I feel like this is all stuff I need.
Hopefully that's not too far in the week.
No, this is great.
Yeah,
This is great. I'm sure they love it. This is good stuff.
That's what I've done. So.
Yeah, very cool. George, John, Vinny, you guys got any other questions for Dalton?
No, I think I'm good.
Yeah, I think I'm fine.
Okay. Yeah. Hey man, you were an awesome interview. Thanks for taking a little extended amount of time here.
No problem. Happy to help.
All right, man. Hey, I'm going to stay in touch in the immediate future, and I'm going to see if I can help
Sure.
you get another entry level person at Uncommon. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks
Yeah,
for that
I love that.
opportunity, sending it our way.
Yeah, sure.
All right,
Thanks. I
man.
appreciate it.
Good luck. Take care.
All right. See you. Good
See
luck,
ya.
guys.
Bye.